So, how do we actually go about building these characters? Well, I mentioned earlier that I don't like to get really detailed at this point of the process during the outlining phase, only because I know that I'm going to fill that in as the book is written. And I like having that kind of discovery process saved for that part. I enjoy that. That's creative for me, but I need something to go off of. So I usually will start with my old friend Dwight Swain. He's long dead, but he was a writing teacher, and he taught Jack Bickham. If you've heard of Scene and Structure, both of these guys have written a lot on character, and I love what Dwight Swain does, and I've just lifted that. And so this is the way I approach writing a brand new character. I start with a noun of vocation and an adjective of manner. So there's two slides here. We're going to go back and forth between them, but we'll start with nouns. I give each character a thing. Vocation is the word Dwight Swain used, but it can be just sort of who they are as a person, right? It doesn't have to be their job necessarily. It doesn't have to be their vocation. Keep it short. Don't go too in depth too early. The reason, again, is I like to let the character kind of speak to that. My very first series I wrote was the Enigma Strain. The first book in the series was the Enigma. Yeah, it was a book called the Enigma Strain. Harvey Bennett was our main character, and he was a park ranger at Yellowstone, and that's all I had. I didn't really know much about him other than that he was at Yellowstone. And so when I got to the adjectives of manner, I said, okay, I have a noun of vocation. He's a park ranger. Let's make him reclusive. I didn't know why, but I just thought that'd be kind of fun. What ended up happening was as I wrote that book, Harvey Bennett revealed to me that he was reclusive because he was basically afraid of commitment, afraid of people. He was afraid of relationship. And he had a good reason to be. He lost his father when he was a kid, and it was kind of his fault, he feels like. So there's all these reasons where he just has pulled back from society, and what better place to go than a national park where he could literally get lost in the wilderness. So that's where that all started. Noun of vocation, and that's all I needed. Let it be short, let it be sweet. Let the character speak to you as you start writing. Secondly, be morally agnostic. This doesn't mean anything religious. It just means don't worry about trying to shove the theme into that vocation or that thing that they're doing too much. Don't make it good or bad. Just make it a thing. Maybe they're a serial killer. Maybe you as the reader want to pretend like you want is the writer, sorry, know that that's a bad thing. Serial killing is bad. Let the character prove that out, though. It's kind of a delicate line to toe, whatever the mixing my metaphors here, but let the character show us, the reader, who they are. So the job itself isn't a good or bad, or it was just a thing. It's just a vocation, but the character can be good and bad, or good or bad. Hope that makes sense. Make it recognizable. Third, give them something that's a little more easy to understand. So this goes in hand with keeping it short. Now we all know, or at least we think we know, what a park ranger is. That's enough. That's fine. We want to play off of our readers' expectations, and in order to do that, we give them something recognizable. So if we say they're a knight, well, we know what that is. Okay, we know what a knight looks like. We know when they operated. We know what they wore, what they literally wearing armor. So that's the impression we get in our mind. You can play with that as a writer, of course, as you start writing the character and building that arc. But when you say what they are, it needs to be recognizable enough to just have something to latch onto. This is probably better explained by way of example. If I'm writing a science fiction book set in deep space and we have aliens in it, I don't want to introduce my main character as a smorgasbord, because that doesn't mean anything. I mean, sure, it's a word that we have in English, but it's not. It doesn't. I don't know what that is. I can't say, well, he was a pretty good smorgasbord, but there were other better smorgasbords out there. We have no idea what that is. If we don't very quickly explain what that is in the next paragraph or two, our readers will be lost. Okay, so this is why I like to give the reader something recognizable to latch onto as the vocation. We can subvert that later. We can say, okay, well, he was a really, really terrible knight and he never wore his armor. That's fine. But don't just say he was a knight and then never put armor on him and never make him doing knight things, right? I hope this makes sense. Okay. Finally, we want to be consistent. We need to kind of keep the same job for the most part every book if we're writing in series, unless that changing jobs is part of the job, part of the vocation. But Harvey Bennett is no longer a park ranger, but that's still kind of who he is in readers' minds. That's still where he came from. That's his background. That was his last career before he kind of jumped ship and went crazy and started the civilian special operations and blah, 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 blah. He's still a park ranger, right? Same thing with, if they're a hacker, they're a computer programmer. They're a smorgasbord, whatever that is. We want to keep that the same throughout books. So try to keep it consistent. So for all those reasons, you might want to keep things short, keep them recognizable. Just think about something you might want them to be doing when we first meet them. And then what we can do to kind of clarify some of their personality a little bit is the second thing Dwight Swain said, which is to give them an adjective of manner. So if the noun of vocation is give them a thing, this is like giving each character a way. So how do they do the thing? Like I said, Harvey Bennett is a recluse. He's reclusive. He doesn't like people. He has a reason for that, but we don't need to get into the reason yet. We just need to know how he does it, how he does that thing. Think in terms of style. This should help you, the writer, create the character, but it should also speak to that character's personality and how they interact with other personalities that they may come across in the book, like the B characters, the sidekick, the love interest, the sage, whoever it is along their journey they're going to meet, and of course the villain and their, the antagonist buddies. So this is the style in which they interact with most people. Just like before, we want to keep this morally ambiguous, like so you can imply goodness and value, but really, again, the character's actions, what you actually have them doing in the plot, is going to prove one way or another who they are morally. I like to use tools as well. So the third tip here is to use things like Enneagram. Like I said, I'm an 8. DISC is another one. Like I'm a high D, right? And so whatever the thing is, by the way, I'm an ENTP if you're a Myers-Briggs fan. These are really cool because they not only tell you who that person is, who the character is, and what they kind of seem like if they were real, if they were a real human, but how they interact with other people, especially people who have different numbers or different Enneagram types, whatever. So use those tools. All of that stuff can only help you. And then 4 is all, and I've kind of alluded to this already, but you have to think of this character when you give them an adjective of manner. Think of them in terms of relationships. How is this going to play out? I knew that by making Harvey Bennett a recluse, it was going to be difficult for him to open up to the love interest I was going to introduce to him later, Juliet Richardson. But that was the whole point. I wanted there to be some tension there because, again, tension and conflict builds books. And so I wanted there to be a good amount of like inherent tension because of who he was. He didn't have to say or do anything. He just was reclusive. So think in terms of relationships. Your characters do not exist in a vacuum. And think of adjectives that might imply relational traits like reclusiveness or outgoing or extroverted. Okay? We'll come back and we'll keep going with the next part in a moment.